Okay, so last week we talked about the basically about the Yetzer. That from the Ramchal, what you see is that the Yetzer fundamentally, is the bodily urges and the urges and drives. We see that this is what the Yetzer is. And like I mentioned, the Chazal trying to destroy the Yetzer, and as a result, many things which are obviously critical, like reproduction, stopped. So you see clearly that the manifestation of the Yetzer clearly is the urges, the physical urges that a person has, and therefore now we understand what the Chazal mean when it says that you should serve God with two yitzrecha, because it says vayitzer odam or something like that. I forgot the exact pasuk, and it says two yud. So so we learn, I think, from there that you're supposed to serve the reproduction with the Yetzer Hara. How can you serve him with the Yetzer Hara? You know what I'm saying? So the concept of serving the reproduction with the Yetzer Hara. So if we know that it is the urges of the physical urges, so therefore you're supposed to direct those physical urges in the proper channels, which is in the direction of mitzvahs, and so on, rather than promotion of self, ego-aggrandizement, or self-fulfillment for purely one's own desires and so on. So therefore we understand what the Yetzer is. The question, however, is what's the Yetzer Tov? That's the question, we find the Yetzer referred to as a malach. So you could actually say that the origin of physical urges is a malach in that sense. But you don't find that the Yetzer Tov is referred to as a malach. Not only that, but what's interesting is that it says that the Yetzer comes in before a child is born. Was the Yetzer Tov enters when he is 12 years old for a man, for a woman, 12 years old for a man. So the question, what in the world enters at that age that we could consider this the Yetzer Tov? You know what I'm saying? What we realize is that something that doesn't happen at birth, it happens only after a certain developmental stage. We can call that puberty, we can all call that the beginning of the teenage years, or adolescence. So the question is, what begins in adolescence that we could identify as the Yetzer Tov?
We can say that we can't relate to malachim. We don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Well, so what's trying to malach is the Yetzer. It has no relationship to us.
You could say that the force the physical body has, its origin is initiated by a malach.
There's a bria that is in charge of pushing that force at us.
Yes, that's what you'd say. Yeah.
He's mamuna. What he is, we don't know.
He's a malach, but he certainly is appointed.
Well, we do know what the force is.
Yeah. Those are the physical urges. But the real question, as I asked, is what is the Yetzer Tov? And we have several characteristics that it enters a person when he's 12 or 13. And that's fundamentally, by the way, why you're not chayev. It's not just because there's a lack of intelligence, it's because there's an inequality in drives. If there's no Yetzer Tov and just a Yetzer Hara, right? So how could you be chayev? How could you be obligated or guilty? Obviously. So therefore, what we see is that the reason for the guilt is if you have a Yetzer Tov. But Yetzer Tov only comes in when you're 13 for a man, 12 for a woman, and so on. So the question is, which we have to ask ourselves, what developmentally occurs at that age that we can identify as the Yetzer Tov?
You see what
I'm saying? You understand the question?
You're saying it's a koyach from the malach.
No, you don't find Yetzer Tov referred to as a malach. Whereas you do find Yetzer Hara as the Satan, sure. The Satan is the Yetzer Hara.
No malach in Yetzer Tov.
No.
Why is so that means Yetzer Tov is something that comes straight from the Rabbi.
Well, everything comes from the Hashem. That's not. I'm not so worried about what the origin is. I'm really wondering what is it.
What is it?
What the origin is obviously the Hashem, and so on. But I can understand some physical urges come when you're born, even an infant, right? There are all kinds of physical urges. But what in the world shows up? Teenager. This is the question.
It has to have something to do with intelligence.
So the question is it's a developmental issue. But what is it?
What we said,
very important to understand.
Well, basically, we said that seichel is the pursuit of emes, of reality.
Yes. Yeah.
So wouldn't that be any moineia, the Yetzer, any moineia from that pursuit of reality?
Well, what interfere? Forget that for a minute. It's just okay. So I said that from the Ramchal, you see, because he talks about the Neshama and the seichel. So I said that the seichel fundamentally is the intellect that pursues knowledge, reality. So that would be. But the problem with that is that kids also have seichel. They also pursue knowledge. Children, but they don't have a Yetzer Tov. Clearly, the Yetzer Tov cannot be solely the pursuit of knowledge or the pursuit of reality.
It's using the intellect as an instrument, but there has to be something else.
Yeah, the intellect obviously is part of it, but because we see clearly that the Yetzer Tov is a developmental idea, that something develops at 13 that was not yet before that, basically at 13,
What?
And so this is the question.
Why is the Yetzer Hara called Ra if some part of his job involves doing things that's a mitzvah to do? I understand that.
Because if you feel an urge or drive, right? You want to cater to that drive.
Well, myself,
It's not because the Hashem said, if you're hungry, so eat kosher food. Hey, I'm hungry. I want to eat. I just passed a great restaurant in Manhattan.
Let's say a person sits down to his bread.
What?
Let's take a tzaddik that eats his bread, right?
Yeah.
He has to eat his bread because otherwise he'll die.
Yes.
But he is hungry for the bread.
Yes.
So he has to at least do whatever he can that he's able to. Let's say he's worked himself to the point where he can be satisfied with bread.
Yes.
So why is that Ra if he's hungry for the bread?
No, the fact of the drive is not evil, but it's to use it for one's own purpose as opposed to doing it for the sake of
but that's our choice to make it Ra. But the mountain itself is not Ra.
No, the thing, that's why you can use the Yetzer Hara also for.
So why do we primarily call
that's
him
exactly
the Yetzer Hara?
what it is.
So why do we primarily call him the Yetzer Hara if it's
that's
really
a
up
good
to
question.
us?
I would imagine because it's something which.
Wait a minute, he tries to make you do Ra.
No, but Rabbi said that he doesn't.
Yetzer Hara that's making you try.
But he makes you do things that Rabbi said he makes you do things that you need to do anyway.
Right, but he uses that incident also to make you do Ra. The earthly things that have a physical drive, he uses that for Ra, not just for the basics.
So what Rabbi is basically saying is that in other words, a person's chayiv to eat to sustain himself, but the Yetzer Hara doesn't just stop there. He wants to push the whole gamut to make you eat a steak.
Well, yeah, to eat the steak, even if it's not kosher.
Right.
Eat any way you want. So I eat because I want to eat, I'm hungry, I'm not interested. It's like, by Esav, he ate with the, Vayeshev and Vayechel, and just got up and left and so on. It was his fulfillment of his needs or drives he was totally immersed in terms of self. There was no recognition whatsoever that this is from the Rebbeinu Shalom and that we have to thank him and so on.
So you said that the drive is Ra, but you're chayiv to do that enough to sustain yourself.
No, the drive is not, the etzem drive, it's physical. But if you use it in a certain manner, right, then it's called Ra.
Who's making the drive?
Well,
who's making the drive?
The physical urges of the brain.
So where's the Yetzer Hara come in?
What?
Where's this malach come in?
The malach comes in to convince you to eat whatever you want.
So the drive itself is really from the body and not from the malach.
Well, yeah, that's what it apparently.
So in other words, there's a drive that you have, and the malach races you on to do it for the Yetzer.
To do it in a bad way.
You do it in a bad way. That's right. Yeah. In
So
any case.
So then, what's primarily the drive? The drive comes from the body.
Well, it's a physical urge, yeah. But the interesting thing is that when they killed the Yetzer Hara in the Gemara in Yoimo, when they killed it, so then chickens stopped laying eggs. All of a sudden they wanted to kill the Yetzer Hara for Zimo. For Avodah Zarah. So they killed it, and all of a sudden, no reproduction, everything stopped, and the chicken didn't lay
The
eggs.
Yetzer for his nose, they wanted to kill.
No, for Avodah Zarah.
They killed
No,
it.
they killed it.
Then they wanted to
That's
kill
right.
that.
That's right. Yeah. But they, and all of a sudden, no reproduction.
So how can that be possible?
Clearly, that drive is a normal physical drive. So.
Why were people not interested then?
Well, with that drive, people do Isurim, other women and so on and so forth.
So the drive itself is not strong enough to do anything. The chickens didn't lay eggs. They don't have a Yetzer Hara.
No, but the urge to reproduce.
They want to take
It's
the
a
Yetzer
physical
Hara
urge.
away, they're taking the drive.
The drive away.
Physical
This was the
drive.
drive.
Exactly what you were saying.
They took the drive
It's two
away.
separate things.
Yeah.
So they wanted to
But
do
there are
the
questions. There are questions you can ask in that Gemara. Chazal didn't know that if they killed the Yetzer Hara for Znus, that it would affect the urge to reproduce altogether. Laying eggs is part of the reproduction process. It's all, Anyway, okay, look, whatever the Gemara is, But I want to get back to the original question of the Yetzer Tov. What is it? And the answer to that question lies in another question. What is the difference between a child and an adult? Because that's really what we want to analyze. What's the difference between a child and an adult?
Responsibility.
Responsibility?
Being part of the club.
There are a lot of
That
kids
you're
that
not
have
an individual, that
responsibilities.
you're more, what?
There are a lot of kids that have responsibilities, right?
Well, I'm saying
A lot of
part-
kids that have responsibilities. So it can't be responsibility. Can't be. A lot of people that have kids have responsibilities. They gotta get up in the morning, gotta go to school, they do it. So that answer would not be correct.
Being part of society. Being an integral part of society. You're part of a minion now. You're
No.
But-
No. There has to be something far more basic. That's the question. What's the difference between a child, and an adult, or even a teenager? Because we're really saying the Yetzer Tov starts when you're a teenager. So the question is, what's the difference between a teenager, an adolescent, and a child? That's the real question. Ever got that question? Remember, clearly it's developmental. It has to be, because it enters only at a certain age. What does maturity mean? There's another question. What does it mean to be mature? You say, well, this guy's very immature, which, by the way, many adults are very immature. Or when you say this child is very mature, what's that mean, really?
He takes things seriously.
His mind is then advancing with his age.
No. What does he take seriously?
He takes life seriously.
He takes life seriously, right? Life. Let's be more general. What does he take seriously, really? Life is certain. Who?
Christ in this world. Responsibility.
No. Well, it's on the way. I really, it's on the way, but
Didn't Rabbi,
it's not it.
Rabbi said one time that developmentally,
Let me tell you what it is, because you guys are not going to get it. We could wait around for another hour and a half, but it's not going to happen. You know what it is? And by the way, this causes a lot of problems for teenagers. It's not intellect. It's not the ability to know reality. Kids are 10 years old, hallelujah. A lot of kids, 10, 11 years old, they run circles around their parents. I'm sure, you guys have kids. Kids are bright kids and they run circles around their parents. They know how to manipulate their parents. It takes chokhmah for that, right? Okay. But you know what it is? What is maturity? Maturity is the desire to conform with reality. That's what it means. In other words, all of a sudden, a child can suspend reality. What's that called?
Imagine.
Play.
Delusion. Yeah.
No, it's not a delusion because they're not sick.
I mean,
It's developmental like that, right? A child can suspend reality. It plays, let's play doctor, right? Let the kids play, right? And they get into it. You'd find it hard to do that. You'd find it hard to get... Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Who knows, But a child can get into, play, make believe, all this kind of stuff, fairy tales, all this kind of stuff. Why? Does a child not know it's a fairy tale? Or that it's make believe and all that? Yeah, they don't, but there's no such thing in reality, but who cares? I can get involved in a non-reality situation. But maturity is where a guy says, what's the reality? The reality is I have what? I have responsibility. I have an obligation. Right? Oh, I gotta take this seriously. All of a sudden, there's a desire to conform to reality. And that's why there's so many problems with teenagers. Why? Because all of a sudden a teenager, what's the essential thing a teenager is grappling with? Who am I? Self-identity. All of a sudden they say, well, who am I really? What is the reality about me? What's important? That's all of a sudden they begin to search values. What's important and what's not important, What are the responsibilities? And so on, And all of a sudden they awaken. It's mamash like a hiserus. They awaken to what? To the world. That's why there's a search to know. Who am I? Who are you? What's out there? What's important? And not only that, there's a tremendous desire to be independent. Because they have this tremendous conflict. Dependence versus independence. They want to be dependent on their parents, but at the same time, they want to be independent. They want to conform and live in reality. Life is part of that reality, no question about that. But it's a desire to conform to reality. We call that maturity. When a person is mature, what does that mean? It means that he's not going to play, he's not going to make believe all of a sudden there's no reality there. You can rely on him that he will meet his responsibilities and obligations. Why? Because he takes it seriously. He wants to conform his life, his behavior to the real world. There's no idea, no concept of play. Yeah, an adult can make believe all of a sudden, there are plenty of adults that go to Disney World. And that's a whole make believe world.
Many adults
they know it's make believe, and they go. And an adult can suspend his interaction, with the real world, but he knows it's he doesn't have this. It's not because all of a sudden he wants to suspend reality and not live up to what reality is. That's Yetzer Tov. It's not only the intellect that wants to seek truth or reality. The Yetzer Tov is I want to accommodate or conform to reality. Serious. In a certain way, what you said, serious. They take life seriously. Almost. Is they take reality seriously.
Where does that come from?
Yetzer Tov. It's a developmental issue. Developmental. All of a sudden something snaps. That's the difference between a teenager and a child.
It's not a malach?
Well, no, it's not.
No, because how can you fight with the Yetzer if he's a malach and you don't have a malach?
Because Yetzer Tov is much greater than a malach.
But where's it coming from? It's a force. Where's it coming from? Force has to come from somewhere.
The question is, what generates that? You know what the answer is? What says? It's Neshama. The Neshama is the Yetzer Tov. And the Neshama wants to do two things. What is reality? And to live in reality. To accommodate, to conform. That's the Neshama. It's a drive of the soul. To take reality seriously. Forget the play. So it's really the Neshama versus a malach.
So what do we say?
And that's what the Ramchal says. That's the concept of the Neshama. The Ainum in Neshama sichlis v'zaka. He says, a person is what? Is a mixture of two opposites. The Ainum in Neshama sichli v'zaka. That's the Yetzer Tov. Except it doesn't appear until 13. And a guf artzi v'okor, which is a derivation of a malach. That's what's ridiculous.
So now when we say that
You guys understand what I just said? It's not just the desire to know what reality is. That's sickly. It's also, I want to live with reality. See, why is that? Right? So because that's what the Neshama does. The Neshama is blocked. The Neshama, in a certain sense, is connected to a physical reality. But the Neshama has a drive. The greatest drive of all is what is out there, and how do I conform to it? That's why adolescents seek value. They seek identity. They seek, who am I? What am I? Where am I going? What's important? And so on. And they're all conflicted. That's the conflict. That's the transition stage between childhood and adulthood is adolescence. But it hits them at 13 years old. And therefore that creates a tremendous amount of conflicts, doubts, problems, see. But where does this come from, the Neshama? Because that's the automatic drive of a spiritual being. Think about it. What's the ultimate drive of a spiritual being? Is reality and the desire to conform with it. Well, I'm going to play around here. You wake up. You know what I'm saying? And of course, within that context, the concept of value. Well, I see what reality is. I want to conform to it. But wait a minute. What should I conform to? Which aspect of reality? That's value. Is this the important thing I should do? Or is this the important thing I should do? You see? Value is a determination of what's what's the word for it? What should I put my time into that will yield the greatest benefit to me? You see? And that's what the Yetzer is. Now, once you have that, once you have this, you can actually, what you can really call it is one word. It's one of the greatest assets a person has. One word. It's a characteristic. You know what it's called?
Conscience.
Who?
Conscience?
No, that's an attribute. No. It's called a mavakesh. Bikush. Search. The greatest characteristic a person has is mavakesh, to seek. A seeker is much more likely to find reality and what the correct path is than a non-seeker. You see.
So the force is that,
and so therefore what a seeker does, a mavakesh, is it will seek what? Meaning. Meaning. Value and meaning are tied together. We value that which is meaningful. So therefore somebody who's a mavakesh, and that koyach of bikush is the koyach of the intellect, which is a product of the Neshama, because it incorporates the ability to know reality, the ability to accommodate or conform to reality. You see.
So
and therefore, it's the search. What Hashem wants your person to do is, I'm going to force you to search, to look for meaning, instead of getting involved and just putting everything aside. The problem is that can be waylaid by the Yetzer. The Yetzer say, you want a meaning? I'll give you meaning. It's Las Vegas. Why? Remember I told you last week what the most difficult thing of all is? Everybody takes sheikhad. We all take sheikhad. We all are bought off by what? By our self-interest. Self-interest is the greatest destroyer of truth. It's what it is. And that's what the Yetzer has. He wants you to be completely interested in self. What is self-interest? Taiva, pleasures, power, security, the desire for security, which is to make a lot of money, and so on. So I can have, all this. So this is what the Yetzer wants. These things blind us, you see. And all of a sudden, the meaning in life is what? It's pleasure, materialism, power, security, etc. So these are self-interests. But the problem is these contradict, or they are in conflict with truth, meaning, and the desire to conform. You see, so those are the two opposite things. You see, this is the problem. That's the classic existential problem, or psychological problem, whatever it is. We are thrown into this. The conflict is between our self-interest which is all the bodily urges and the psychological and biological needs and urges on one side, and the truth and meaning and value, you see, and the desire to conform. And this goes on every waking minute of our lives.
The desire to conform.
Everybody got that? So therefore, that only happens when you're 13. That's when maturity hits. But that is maturity, you see, and so on.
So someone like Yetzer is like the greatest, because he was the
Yeah.
ultimate mevakish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, no, he's the ultimate, but he was an incredible mevakesh. Yeah. Well, he searched. Because I'll say he went through every single avodah zarah. You know, that's not bad. You know.
I mean, Klaiser was hindered in on a silver platter. He had this.
Well, who had the greatest measure of that, of maturity? Avram Avinu. Yeah, it's what he had. His incredible mind. He had it at 3 years old, which it's incredible. He had an unbelievable characteristic called bikush. He was not satisfied,
He had a sense for
and he had incredible intellect. One, I mean, look what he had going for him. He had incredible mind, intellect. But it's amazing that he wanted to conform to this intellect, conform to reality. Chazal said 3 or 48. Okay, 48 is rather old, so on. But at 3, but he was a tremendous mavakish. And therefore, in the end, he discovered the truth. That all these things are nothing more than creations. And it's not, the sun isn't God, these are creations. This is the handiwork of some type of incredible supreme being. It's funny today, just as an aside. In the olden days, it was much harder to realize there's a God. Why? Why was that? Why was that true?
They lived in a very physical world.
What?
They lived in a very physical
Yes,
world.
that's true.
How old? Olden days, how far?
The olden days, I would say
You got to restore it by something.
3,000 years ago.
And make it grow.
3,000 years ago. Yeah. But you know what it is, what shakes up a person, and I believe it's the greatest way to have emunah. It's not used enough. The greatest way to have emunah, that there is no way, I should have wrote that article, there's no way that there cannot be a God, supreme being. There is no way. What's the greatest proof? And we have it today. We had it for a couple hundred years already.
Sophistication.
Who?
Sophistication of the Bria. Harmony, sophistication.
I will use a better word than that, although you are correct. It is the incredible complexity of the Bria. That's what you mean. And you look at things, so today we know. You look at the human body, I can't believe this. I mean, the complexity of the human body is beyond belief. The brain, 100 billion neurons. I mean, what is this? And they're all, and the synapses, they don't touch each other even. It's unbelievable, Then just the organs, you look at a plant, you look at an ant. I mean, what is this? How does a thing so tiny, it has a whole life? You know what I'm saying? Bugs, fleas, they're total organisms that have developed. They have digestive systems. They reproduce. What is this? It's impossible. The complexity of the universe, or of the world, and so on and so forth, is the greatest single proof of the Rebbe Shalom. In fact, I didn't bring the article. It's very cute. There's a guy who was an Oxford professor. What was his name? I'm not sure if it was Flea, something like that. Anyway, he was an incredible skeptic. A skeptic is a min. What a skeptic is. It's a min,
A nice way.
Epicurus, what?
A nice way to say min.
It is apostate. He's an Epicurus. He's a non-believer. He's an atheist. And he was among the chief, And he preached this atheism or skepticism, as it's called. He was a professor in Oxford, I think, And he preached this, for years, And finally, when he was 83 years old, he came to the conclusion, no, there has to be a God. It was interesting. And this guy was like one of the Rosh Hashanah. major speakers that represent atheism and so on, Why? Because the world is simply too complex for it to have evolved. The truth is there. That's what it is. The truth is there. So what the Derech Hashem did, which is interesting, but today we have much greater access because we know the complexity. In those days, 3,000 years ago, what they know about the human body, really, and so on. So today, it's very easy to become an incredible mindman. I remember I once watched a video of a biology course. They have videos of this, by the way, and the guy was very good, whatever, and so on, So I watched this video, and this guy was discussing. He was describing the cell. I mean, it's beyond belief. There are thousands of chemical reactions going on in every cell, every microsecond, every second. Like, who's organizing this? And then you have one cell, and then you have all the cells. There's 100 billion cells. 100 trillion cells. What is this? It's a machine that we've never seen, And when I was watching, I said, how can a guy be a min? It's impossible. How the cell membrane allows things in and allows things out, and there's proteins, which is a key. A hormone has a key that fits exactly into some aspect of the cell membrane, and all of a sudden it turns it, and then there's a whole cascade of chemical reactions that allow the cell to allow insulin. I'm telling you, it's not to be believed. And anybody made this. And that's only one thing. And so on. The whole natural world is impossible. But 3,000 years ago, they didn't have this knowledge. So it was much harder. But apparently, Developmental knew, how deep is your handiwork? What was he referring to? Think about that. Somehow they were in contact with the incredible complexity of the universe, of the world. And that's of the living universe. And so on. What about the non-living universe? I once told you there are constants that are 30 digits long. It's like 1 point, and then there's 30 digits long. It's a constant, that if it was altered by 4 digits at the 30th place, the universe couldn't exist. And there are 6 of them. 6 of them. For instance, the classic one is you have a nucleus, but you have what? You have protons and neutrons. But the protons in the nucleus is positively charged. But we know that like charge is repelled. So the thing is, how can any atom be stable? Because if you have, let's say, 15 protons, let's say oxygen has 8 protons, right? And so they're all repelling each other. So there's no such thing as an oxygen atom cannot exist. No atom can exist. So the question is how? And the answer is that there's a force called a strong force that holds the whole nucleus together. You see, and it exactly equals, the repelling. It attracts. And so that's exactly equal. Now, if one was more than the other, and it's like a string of digits, 30 digits long. If you change it like from 4 to 8, let's say it's from 4 to 7 or whatever. If it went down to 2 or up to 9, then the atom couldn't exist. But that's incredible.
How did they figure that out?
These guys, they manipulate nano things. That's a 1/1000th of a meter, nano.
What does 1 billionth have to do with 30 digits? 30 digits is a lot more than it's more than 1 billion.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that today it's incredible what they can do. Yeah.
Over a billion.
Well, thousands of billions, whatever. So, Nano? Yeah, whatever. But what I'm saying is that. So the question is, and there are 6 of these constants. The force that want to break the nucleus, and the force that keeps it together has to be exactly equal. That if there was a variation on the 30th place of 3 digits, that's absurd. And that's only one constant. Then there's the constant of the stars, where the stars stars, nothing more than a massive hydrogen bomb fusion. It's just blowing up all the time. But why do stars exist? Why don't they all just blow to bits? And the answer is gravity. But that means the gravitational pull has to cancel out the desire to explode. It's exact. That's why the star can exist billions of years, so to speak, right? The sun, whatever, it's got another 5 billion years till it burns out, and so on and so on, whatever. So we can be feel good, you know. Now, it's not going to happen in our lifetime. We're going to tell you, you know. But that constant has to equal that the gravitational pull to pull it together and the explosive pull to blow the whole thing apart has to be exact and therefore it's stable. And it's a number 3 digits long, and very like 5 digits. It's over with. You know, that's the second constant. And there are many more. The classic is water. All liquids freeze and they contract. They become solid. Water is the only exception. It's incredible. You know, water, as soon as you get down to I think 3 or 4 degrees above zero, it expands. Doesn't contract, become ice. It expands and becomes lighter. So ice is lighter than water. As a result of that, only the top surface of a lake freezes, and not the lake, which would kill all the fish. You know, and water is the only exception to the rule. Wow, are we lucky? Thank God for chance and for evolution. You know, or where would we be? You know, it's like it's kind of a joke. Or the fact that the Earth is exactly 93 million miles away, right? It was a little closer, we'd burn up. A little farther away, we'd freeze to death, right? Oh no, it's exact. Well, why are we lucky? You know. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, basically. So we can easily be a miming. In those days, they didn't know the complexity of the universe. It was hard to be a miming, you see. But the greatest characteristic, attribute that a person can have vis-a-vis religion is bikush, search. Because if you search, one, and you don't allow your self-interest to blind you, B, you'll find the emes. The person knows, he's not worried. That's all he had to give you. You see, the Yetzer, which is the intellect plus the desire to conform to reality, you know what I'm saying? And the Yetzer, which is sheikhat. That's really what we're dealing with. You'll find your way, you see. It's an interesting how the bunch of made. So we're in constant conflict, and it always works. Anyway, from the Ramchal, that's what you see.
How does the person change to his bikush level?
How does it change his bikush level?
What differentiates one person from another? What causes one person to have a higher level of bikush?
I would say the answer is meaning. Meaning is the greatest of all. It's the only. You have to ask what's meaningful. Is it to have a life of taiva? A life of pleasure, materialism? What is meaningful?
Somebody has a higher level of bikush because he's higher in Neshama?
No, you could have more intelligence also.
That's a gift.
There are people who are more intelligent.
That's a higher Neshama.
That's the way God created them.
Meaning comes from, first of all, how your parents raised you. You know, if they tell you, hey, forget about the meaning, just go after what you want, you know. You know, so it's a matter of education. It's a matter of rearing, child rearing. It's a matter of intelligence, you know. But in the end, there's a lot of kids, there are a lot of adolescents that are mature and they're not smart. It's interesting. And then there are a lot of smart people that are immature. You know what I'm saying? And so on. So it's very hard to know what is what is that which really determines a person's level or degree of bikush.
People can have a choice.
Yeah. But the bikush, as long as you want to understand what is meaningful, what is real, and I want to live that way, right? Then somehow, Hashem knows you'll make it. Because eventually, like complexity, you mavakish, and all of a sudden you take a look, it's what's going on? It's incredible, you know? They say the brain, for instance, you know, and this I read a long time ago, you know? The brain is an organ that replicates. Imagine if there were 18,000 planets. 18,000 planets. And each planet had 4 billion people. The brain can administrate all of it. That's what we're dealing about, the human brain. You know, it's beyond belief. Imagine an administrator that can administer, control 18,000 worlds or planets each one of them inhabited by 4 billion people. I mean, like, who's this guy? You know what I'm saying? But alone, without any assistance. Not bad. You know? And that's what the brain does. How? Who made the brain? See? So we have an advantage, you know. And the truth is, even without Bikush, there's a guy walking around this world blind. You know, it's incredible. It takes koyach to blind yourself. It takes, you really have to be obstinate, to blind yourself. It's so obvious, All you have to do is pick up a textbook, a biology, or botany, or anything, Or, even pick up a textbook of electronics. You know what I'm saying? And you realize, the brain is infinitely more complex than an iPod. And everybody's going crazy because man made an iPod, or a computer. Yet the brain laughs at this, or the stomach, or the circulatory system is beyond belief. You know what I'm saying? Every single organ in the body is beyond belief. Who ever heard of a pump that can pump millions of times, never breaks down, repairs itself, doesn't have to call a repairman, it doesn't have to dial a call. It eats, it repairs itself, never breaks down, we hope, right? And it pumps for 9,500 years. What is this? The heart. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so the bikush, if there's bikush, and the person is able to control the sheikhad, which is the self-interest, all the pleasures and so on and so forth, he will arrive at the truth. He will arrive at the truth. So in the end, what I feel is sit down one day and say, listen, the greatest thing I can do is to search, to seek. And to seek what? To seek what is really real. Meaning. Meaning is the concept of value. Meaningful is the concept of value. And that's the greatest of all things. See? If you do that, if you have the concept of bikush, right? And the concept of knowing reality, and the concept of wanting to conform to reality, that's the Yetzer, ultimately. And these are the drives of the Neshama. This is the inherent drives of the Neshama. That's what it is. But on the other side, the drives of the body is the sheikhad mechanism. Very important. It's a mechanism of sheikhad. It's what gives us the conflict, because we don't really want to know the truth. We really just want to fulfill the bodily needs.
But does it affect our desire to conform, or
What?
reality, the sheikhad, or it affects our vision of reality? Probably
it affects it. Sheikhad will blind us on everything. It will blind us. It's not so complex. Or even if it is, so what? I mean, whatever it takes to disturb.
No, but people distort realities. They still want to conform with reality. They see it. They are not comfortable to not to conform to reality. They're uncomfortable for sure.
So what will they do?
They'll distort reality. They want to distort reality.
Which is called what? Remember last week I said what it's called? It's called the defense mechanism. To rationalize. All the mission want to rationalize. He distorted reality. He said, it's your fault, not mine.
But I'm sure they don't. The desire to conform with reality, it's never broken. They always want to conform with reality. They just want to see reality the way it is.
Yeah, well, they will create their own reality. That's the problem. Somebody's mavakish.
Then Yetzer Hatov is misdirected. Then it's Yetzer Hatov is misdirected. It still insists on conforming with reality, just wrong reality.
A defense mechanism does two things. It denies reality, and it creates a new one.
Right.
That's how it works. Rationalization, like I said, the guy got a 40 on the test, right? So first he has to deny that he's stupid. The second has to create a reality that teaches an idiot. You see, it goes hand in hand, right? That's he's got to deny, create at the same time. But it's always sheikhad. That's what's doing it. It's a desire to be blind. I told you last week, the Torah is incredible. It says, right, even if you're a chacham, you're going to be what? Blind. And you're a tzaddik, don't make a difference. The salaf divid tzaddikim. And if they can't make it, the tzaddik and the chacham, forget about us. Because the Torah has an interest, the Torah's definition of a tzaddik and a chacham, we're way, a long way off from that and so on, And they also, self-interest is an unbelievable, powerful distorter of truth. We live with this all day long. We constantly deny, and we constantly fabricate a new reality, and so on. But the koich of the neshama to know reality, to want to know, to conform to reality, is that's the ally that we have to rely on, And like I say, if you ask yourself, what is meaningful, and whatever is meaningful, I will do. Search, seek. The seeker is the greatest act of man. Because eventually the Muslim knows that if you seek, as it say, seek and you shall find. I don't know. What? Yeah, that's right. Seek and you will find the Muslim. Why? Because you come to the conclusion, like I said, there has to be a supreme being, Avraham Avinu. We can't explain this complexity. And not only that, it's not just the complexity of the structures and so on. It's also that the concept of design. Not, for instance, if I had a rock, so I could say, well, a rock is designed perfectly to be a paperweight. So I found the purpose, but I would never say it was designed for that, So you do mind here several ideas. It's not just the complexity, but these things actually have a design that can accomplish an effect, you see. And when you look around, everything seems to have a design. Everything seems to have an effect. The question is, who did that? Complexity is one thing, but to be complex and be able to accomplish an effect, you know what I'm saying? That's unbelievable. When you look at there's interesting books on this. If you look at the animal kingdom, it's beyond belief, the animal kingdom, or the fish. The way a fish is designed to protect itself, it's just incredible, There are fish that can change, it's beyond belief, there are fish that can change their colors, and then fish that are poisonous, and it's just, it's like a leech. You ever seen a leech? I use leeches these days, Or take a mosquito, I don't think you just swap and it's dead. But you've just killed an unbelievable machinery. Why? Because what does a mosquito do? It's all, he inserts his proboscis, that's what it's called, right into your skin, right? And he's going to suck your blood, because that's what he does, right? He needs nutrients, right? But wait a minute, that blood's going to clot. So the mosquito has a chemical it's an anti-clotting, Well, how did the mosquito how did it know how did it make this chemical, does it have a PhD in chemistry? Is that what it did? Did it order it from a lab? You know what I'm saying? And there's all kinds of things. It's anti-clots and the fact that it can pull it out. And then, besides that, when it sticks its thing in, right, you should give a startle. So it has also what's called anesthesia. It's like a doctor comes with his whole kit. This guy comes with his whole kit, pierces your skin. You don't feel it because it has a anesthetic, right?
He never finished the medical school, really.
He never went to medical school, and then all of a sudden to make sure the blood doesn't coagulate as an anti-clot. It's unbelievable. We get this stuff. This is nothing compared to the animal kingdom. You study any single creature, it's beyond belief what these things can do, how they survive. We don't know, but today there are books in this, you can read that. So anybody who has his eyes and his ears and his brain open, he says, what is this? It's impossible. Bikush. If you develop the concept of bikush, which is the Yetzer Tov, but like I said, Yetzer Tov is not only the ability to know reality, it's a desire to conform to reality.
It's a combination of these two things.
A combination, yeah. Well, conform to what? So you have to know reality. You have to want to conform, and that is the concept of the drive. That is the concept of a drive of the Neshama.
So Bikesh Yaakov relation to Shalva means?
Well, that's not the. No. It's a good question.
Tricky question.
It's a tricky question, yeah. No, we got to place this in its proper context, right? Yaakov Avinu, unbelievable Mavakesh. But Bikesh to the Shai is women. Yaakov Avinu was a Bikesh, so what does it mean he wasn't a Mavakesh? Rugs are Yosef, because here's the thing. The job is to seek reality, right, to know, and then the job is to conform to reality. Fine, okay. But what happens if you feel you've done it? You've accomplished the task. Well, Yaakov Avinu felt he did it. What did he do? He's an unbelievable Avinu. He has 12 Shvatim. He brought the Jews into existence. He figured he did it. He accomplished the reality and the desire to conform. So he felt he had accomplished his task. That was the mistake. You never finished. That was his mistake. Don't think that you finished the job of Bikush, or that it's not necessary anymore to mavakesh and to look for reality and to accommodate. You still have a long way to go. You know what I'm saying? Like Derech Hashem said. The only time your job is over when you're in the grave, and you know your job's over, finished. Until then, there's work to do, and that's it. So, whatever. Can't go Yaakov is Yaakov, but clearly you see the Bikush the Shava, and the Hashem said no way. So the question is, what was in Yaakov Avinu's mind? And the answer is, he had done what he thought was necessary, and he accomplished it, and that's it. What else is there to do? That doesn't mean Yaakov Avinu would have gone on a vacation. What he would have done is, learn all day, whatever his shalva was. Obviously it's not the same as our shalva, and so on.
Completely opposite from what happened afterwards.
Well, it's a major overhaul of his piece. To the death of Yosef. So the whole. It's not just the death of Yosef, because with Yosef's death, what that meant also is that he failed to do the job, because you need 12 shvatim, and Rachel wasn't around, and Leah, obviously I don't think Leah was around either, or whatever. So that means you didn't do the job. You didn't bring 12 shvatim in Klal Yisrael. So he thought, that's what he said, it's finished. Yaakov Avinu thought he was going to get him, or he never did the job. And that must have cost him unbelievable depression and nefesh. And the proof of that is the Shekhinah left him for 22 years. That's the proof, But anyway, so we now have a hand on what the Yetzer is, what the Yetzer Tov is, and what is the conflict. We're in exact with the conflict. The conflict is on one side, bikush, to search for truth, reality, 1. 2, to want to accommodate or to conform to that reality is 2. And among the major ideas in that search is meaning, 3. That's one side. On the other side, and those are drives from the Neshama. On the other side, you have the physical urges and so on, and that presents the concept of the concept of self-interest. So, once you have self-interest on one side, which is the material, the physical, and you have reality on the other, you are in a tremendous conflict. So the way a person solves that is called a defense mechanism, where you deny reality and you create a new one in order to accommodate your lie, that you just lied to yourself, which is called self-deception. We are experts in self-deception. We practice this all day long. We self-deceive ourselves all day long. And the self-deception is the shechah. So I think we have an interesting handle on what's going on, what the two drives are, right? And what exactly is the conflict here, and in a certain sense how to overcome. You have to machazik yourself every day by saying, no, whatever reality says, that's the truth, and therefore I have to accommodate that, and not be blinded by my self-interest, and therefore sheikhad and self-deception, and so on. It's like the old story, where you tell a guy the truth, and he doesn't want to hear that, so he tells you back, excuse me, don't confuse me with the facts. Don't confuse me with the facts. I had enough time lying to myself. You're going to make it hard for me to lie to myself? Don't do that. It's not right. It's not nice. See? And that's basically understanding. And one comes from the Neshama, and the other comes from the physical urges, which in many ways is the Yetzer. It comes from the Yetzer.
So when a guy comes to, they say it comes loss of love.
The what?
The Yetzer comes in, he puts all his chayvus on the scale.
Yeah.
The one who's putting all his schusim on the scale is his own neshama.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Your own neshama is coming to you.
Yeah.
It's not another malach over here.
No, the Yetzer Tov is the Neshama. Why is that? Because think about it, that makes sense. You don't need a Yetzer Tov. You already have one. You're Neshama. What do you need a Yetzer Tov for? What do you need a malach to tell you to do good? Your essence tells you to do good. But what you do need is a Yetzer, because that's the physical body.
It's yourself also.
What?
Physical body is yourself.
No, not really. No.
You're made of two parts.
No, that's
Yes.
chayvus.
Yeah, but your essential identity is the
Push to do
Neshama.
big.
Your
It's not a mouth.
what?
It's not. It's.
Well, the manifestation is the urging and so on.
I mean, the person was made of two different parts. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
the
Yeah, it's a composite. A person is a composite. But the question is, of these two composites, which is really the essential thing, and the proof that we will be a neshama in Olam Haba is obviously the neshama, and therefore the body will be subject to dematerialization.
There is a malach also.
Where?
There may be a ruach hatov also, which entices a person to sin.
That's what we're saying.
Well, yeah, so that's the origin.
In addition to the body, there's something.
Yes, the origin of that is the I mean, the real
So
question.
somebody says there's two different Yetzer. There's one the bodily urges, and then there's also a malach.
Yeah, you know, see, what's interesting is you see this, where Adam Rishon, he's going to talk about Adam Rishon, right? Adam Rishon, he didn't have Yetzer. The Yetzer was the Nachash, but the Nachash was outside his body. So the interesting is that if he doesn't have the Yetzer, what was the Nachash addressing? If I don't have a timer for this, then, for instance, if I sit there and say, I'm going to convince you to eat wood. Wood is delicious. It's nutritional because that's carbohydrates. You know what I'm saying? And it's carbohydrates means you get all the sugar you want. I mean, are you going to think about it? Say, are you crazy? You don't have a time to eat wood, right? So why would I convince you? Or how would I convince you to eat wood? So the question is, when the Yetzer convinced Chava, but she had no Yetzer inside. But then what was he addressing? That's the question. If Chava had no inclination whatsoever to sin, then what was the Chonochash addressing?
She enticed.
You know, so in what way was he enticing her if she didn't have any drives? You see, what was he addressing himself to? And Chava Adam. And the answer to that is, there was one thing he had.
Was addressing the Yetzer Tov.
Nechman, it was Tegel Mara. Nechman, he gave her a whole drasha.
No, that wasn't. Yeah, no.
He's still using for the kid.
Oh, the ego. I want to be God. That's what he was addressing. It wasn't the Rikun itself. He said, listen, and Adam Rishon had that desire.
The ego
To
is
be
where does that fit
omnipotent.
into your model of Mavakesh and self-interest? Where does the ego fit in?
Again, that desire to be God, the ego,
Self-interest.
was the self-interest.
Self-interest.
And the Sutton, because other than that, what's a Sutton addressing himself to? The Nachash.
What generates the self-interest?
Oh, so that's an interesting concept. What did generate that self-interest? To be God, or to be somebody, which means, of course, to be God, but to be somebody more, So that's the question. What is the origin of the ego, So what I would say...
Not the goof, for sure.
What?
Not the goof.
It's not the goof, no. There's no body, it's not the body saying to be somebody, What I would say is interesting, and this is my idea, I hadn't found it anywhere, is that when you take a neshama and put it into a body, all of a sudden it has tremendous anxiety. It's called an existential anxiety, because it's separate from the Baruch Shalom. And therefore, all of a sudden, it has to reassert the fact that it exists. So what I would say is that the desire, reality, all that stuff is the neshama. But then the fact that it was connected to the physical body created an incredible existential anxiety from the neshama itself. So in a certain sense, the neshama was fighting itself. There's a fear that I'm zero. If you're next to the Rebbe Shalom, you feel totally alive. If all of a sudden they throw you into some dark, foreboding place, what do you feel? You feel you're going to go under. Because you're disconnected from Chiyus. When you're disconnected from God, a person who was connected from God, which is the Neshama, before it entered the body, right? It's totally alive, totally, totally secure. It has total self-worth. But if all of a sudden the person takes that and forces it into the body, right? It's like taking a bright lamp and putting it into a cover. You know what I'm saying? Automatically, the neshama itself will generate an unbelievable spiritual anxiety because it's where all of a sudden it feels it doesn't exist. So therefore, if something feels it doesn't exist, what must it do? It has to reassert or take actions which will convince it or make it feel that it does exist. You see? So the way I see it is that the neshama itself had a conflict on one side and the bikush and so on the other side, and because it didn't come from the Yetzer, so to speak, because the Yetzer was outside his body. So like I said, what was he addressing? So what I'm saying is that the neshama itself, because it was inserted in the physical body, had this what's called existential anxiety, that it isn't.
So the tools
therefore it needs to reassert its being.
It spoke straight to Hashem. How could it not feel that?
Well, that's true, but
Clear.
that's true, but it still had the feeling of loss. It wasn't what it used to feel. Look, you take a prince, you take a king, king who's a king of, he's got everything going. And all of a sudden, the king, gets kidnapped and so on, and all of a sudden he's thrown into prison. That guy's going to feel a whole different way than what he felt when he was king. Same thing, the neshama was connected to God. And all of a sudden it finds itself in a lonely, dark prison called the body. What's the neshama going to feel? Hey, I got to get out of here. All of a sudden it questions its own ability to survive, its ability to exist. Because we look at the difference and so on, So in a certain sense, which is interesting, the neshama itself created the need. And the Sultan knew that. So that's who he talked to.
So the Sultan has two tools to use for
Ramchal doesn't say that. That's my own chiddush.
It's coming out that the Yetzer Rishon was not between the neshama and the guf, but the guf enabled the neshama to have its own nisayon within itself.
The guf, yeah. In that sense, yes.
So you have to understand why do you need.
It wasn't the guf; it was the situation of the neshama losing its previous status, and that created an incredible anxiety of existence. Who am I? What am I? Am I anything? Self-worth, whatever, and so on. And that was the need that the Nochash addressed itself to.
So
interesting. Yeah. It's a whole different, And then once that happened, then the Neshama, then the Nochash entered Adam Rishon's growth. Then the whole thing started. As Zoyama, that's what that's all concept of. Then all of a sudden, Mida connected Mida. You believe the Satan, then all of a sudden you will be now connected to the guy, and therefore his connection is that he's able to insert in you Zoyama, and so on, and that's it. That starts the whole ball rolling. So that's the interesting question. What was it before? I've never seen anybody that even deals with this question really. What was he addressing himself to?
So the Sultan has two forms of tools to use. He has from the neshama's anxiety, and he has the physical body. The drives of the body to use to.
Okay, that's it. What?
He has the drives of the body and the neshama's anxiety to drive you to sin.
No, that's the neshama's anxiety. I don't know what the Sultan.
But the Sultan used that. Well, the Nochash used that. You're saying it doesn't apply nowadays?
No, today we have taiva. Today we don't need that. Well, it does. Actually, it does. That's another shir. The difference between psychological anxiety and existential anxiety. Adam had existential anxiety, but not psychological anxiety.
They don't care.
So he basically has a whole tool set.
So,
Okay.
go ahead.